In widespread criticism of the report on Zimbabwe's post-election violence. Now, Zimbabwe's main opposition has rubbished the report, which blames it for the deadly August protests on the streets of Harare back in August, you'll recall. The report condemns the police and soldiers for firing the bullets that killed 6 people. Let's get more analysis now, and we're joined in studio by the South African researcher in international law, and that is Dr. Thompson Chengeta. Dr. Chengeta, thank you very much for making the time this morning. So the report essentially has found that the Zimbabwean army used excessive force against unarmed protesters. I think that goes without saying. The real question here should be who signed for the soldiers to be deployed in the streets of Harare on August 1, but also importantly, who gave the order for the use of live bullets?
Thank you very much, Koli, for the question. Precisely, you go to the heart of the matter. Let me begin by saying that I usually have this phrase where I say that when you decide to jump into a river, you have to swim all the way, not halfway, or you drown. And I'm afraid to say that the Motlanthe Commission report is actually drowning in incompleteness. Why am I saying that? In as much as it mentions and blames the soldiers for the killing of civilians, in particular shooting of civilians, 4 civilians were shot in the back, it doesn't touch on the aspect of command responsibility, which is a legal component of who is criminally liable for certain acts. So commanders, for example, can be liable for the actions of their subordinates if, upon the deployment of those subordinates, knew or ought to have known that those subordinates were likely to commit crimes, were committing crimes, and did nothing about it. Secondly, if, upon realizing that such subordinates have committed crimes, did not punish those subordinates. In the present circumstances, it's clear. When you deploy only 67 soldiers with AK-47, with live ammunition, to try and monitor a situation of more than 4,000 people, it's likely that you know what is going to happen. And this omission by the Commission to mention actually on the command responsibility, which goes way up to the chief in command, which is President Mnangagwa, is very, very, very unfortunate. And I must say also that the lack of human rights language in the report, it talks of it as just events. It's a clear violation of the right to life. A clear neglect of the state obligation to protect the right to life. And nowhere do you find in the report such language. And it is unfortunate, especially for a commission which had lawyers, respected lawyers like Professor Maduku, so to say.
What do you make of the report also finding against the opposition MDC alliance, saying that the use of language and the use of insightful language, if you like, was also to blame for heightened tensions on the streets of Harare that day? Do they have some shoulder to blame?
Koli, in my language, which is Shona, we usually say, which means don't testify to things which you don't know, which you don't have evidence for. As far as the report and the evidence presented therein, I cannot testify as to whether, in particular on that day, the opposition was responsible for what happened. The Commission didn't use that particular evidence. But what is more critical, and which I keep emphasizing to everyone to say this is the crux of the matter, when it comes to the protection of the right to life, it's state obligation. You cannot, as the report attempts to do, try to apportion such responsibility to non-state actors. That's not the question, because the state is the one which has those obligations to protect its citizens from violation of the rights. And what the report seems to say, and what the state seems to say at this particular moment, which is very unfortunate, is to suggest that I only violated your rights because you provoked me. It doesn't work like that, and it shouldn't work like that. And for the commissioners not to have emphasized or driven that point home is something which is regrettable.
Dr. Chengeta, I spoke to the MDC yesterday, and they're very clear that this report, which was headed, or this report stemming from a commission headed by a former statesman of South Africa, Kgalema Motlanthe. Sadly, I'm sad to use these words, but they called it a whitewash. Do you concur with that characterization?
To a large extent, I do. I'll give two reasons why. First, you remember upon the appointment of the commissioners, there was this argument to say that how can a person who is implicated in the events, especially the violations, be the one to be appointing commissioners? And people were saying, you know what the High Court of Zimbabwe said? They said, no, that's not a non-issue because it was not President Mnangagwa who deployed the soldiers. A High Court judgment. And now on the evidence of the commission, it's actually there that it was him who deployed them. So on the aspect, if you see at the individuals or the nature of the report, how they try to articulate issues, which is the second aspect, is where I feel as if it's kind of a whitewash. Why would I give this example? It is the manner in which the commission was evaluating evidence. I'll give you one example. They will have evidence from this side and this side, and they don't give justification why they're believing the other and not. I'll give you a specific example. There is a suggestion that one Tendai Biti was one of the leaders of the MDC Alliance, was seen with one Jim Kunak in the streets, which is very absurd because in this era of recording, surely there should be someone with a video recording of that particular incident. And this is supported by two individuals, right? Then comes Tendai Biti, denies and supported by two individuals. But the commission then, in making its findings, says, we are really convinced that the MDC was involved because, according to evidence, Tendai Biti was seen with two individuals. Like, why are you preferring this evidence to this one? So that such things, paint a picture where you feel as if was the commission trying to apportion blame to non-state actors, as I've emphasized. And the second reason, also on the assessment of evidence, you would see that right from the beginning, it seems if you go on the website of the commission right now, they were cutting evidence to have only clips which support their narrative. For example, where Tendai Biti says, the court Tendai Biti say, they were actually inciting people because Tendai Biti say, we will die in the streets for our vote, right? That's the quotation which they use. You go to the actual video, right after he said that, he says, our protest will be peaceful. The commission chose to omit that. And this is evidence in them. And one questions, why would an impartial commission do that?
Dr. Chengeta, thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for. Thanks indeed for making the time this morning. He is the South African researcher on international law. Coming up.
Cody, just to correct, I'm from the South African Research International Law. It's an institution.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.